Hi there, and you're very welcome to Her Story on WomenTalk Radio. I'm Eunice Olsen, and today I'm very privileged to have with me Vanessa Ho, the Project Director of Project X, a non-profit organization which champions the rights of sex workers in Singapore. Now, I know this is a topic that we don't often talk about, but sex workers also sometimes are considered one of the most vulnerable in society, and I think also very discriminated against as well. So I think it's very important to hear their story, their perspective, and especially for an organization that's worked very intensely and very deeply with these sex workers. Now we're going to have a two-part series with Vanessa, and in the first part she's going to shed some light on the situation of sex workers in Singapore and the extremely vulnerable position that these women are in. Now at Women Talk, we always aspire to be an objective source of media, and we respect the views of everyone on our show. In the spirit of internet freedom, we hope that you will respect their views too. The episode contains mature content which may or may not be suitable for listeners under 18. And this is Her Story. Listen, and you will hear stories of beauty, strength, and inspiration. Let's talk Women Talk. So where are the majority of the women from?
Majority are from China.
Okay.
I think that's definitely a clear majority. But a large population from Vietnam, from Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. Yeah.
And then some Singaporeans?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. There are Singaporeans in the industry. As really a minority, but
Right.
definitely there are people, substantial number of Singaporeans working.
And how did they get themselves to Singapore? How did they get here?
Singapore is clear choice because we have the strongest currency in the region, right? A lot of people do see Singapore as the holy grail. If you go there, you earn a bit only in Singapore dollars, you bring home, booms, right? It's a lot of money. There are recruiters. Some people come because friend of a friend of a friend. Others come because they're recruiters in their home country. There are sex workers who are on work permits. They are the ones in the licensed brothels.
Does that also mean if it's a more kind of a licensed agency, do they get better protection?
Initially, I thought that way as well, right? If it's licensed, it's above board, it's transparent, means there are less abuses or exploitation that will take place. But knowing a lot of the workers now, speaking to them, and we realize that it might be a bit of a tangent story lah. Some licensed workers come to us and say they can't leave the brothels that they've been assigned to. Some licensed workers say that they didn't know that they were coming in to do sex work when they applied for this work permit, and then ended up having to do sex work. Which
So
is
that almost
an indicator.
bordering on trafficking already.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So these things do happen in a licensed arena, and unfortunately, it seems like these women don't know what their rights are, even though they are licensed. Also, because the policy that regulates the industry, the licensed part of the industry, is not made public. So even as an NGO, when we want to sort of advise the workers on what their rights are, we have no access to that document. We have no access to their contract. What did they sign? We cannot advise because it's not public at all. So we try to tell the workers just based on logical rights that they have.
So for example, if somebody reports, let's say, tells you I was raped by a customer, and how does law enforcement look at that case if, let's say, they are an unlicensed worker?
So it seems like there is some kind of hierarchy of violence. When you report a case to the police, they look at evidence, right? How strong is your case? Are there physically any bruises that they can see with their eyes? Do you look like the ideal victim in their eyes? Are you crying?
But rape is not always this.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't always see physical evidence.
Exactly. So if they don't feel like you are the perfect victim, or they don't feel like your story is
The
true,
perfect victim? Oh dear.
the look
yeah,
of the
understand.
perfect victim. Then we've had cases where women tell us the police just said, go home. You do this kind of job. You should deal with this yourself. You should know better.
Now, at this point, I had the opportunity to accompany Vanessa into Geylang, which is a well-known red light district in Singapore, and we spoke to a sex worker there, Amy. Now, of course, this is not her real name, to protect her identity. And I also want to say that we're very privileged to have her tell us a story, because it's not easy, or rather, we had just met, and she trusted us to be able to speak with her.
Sometimes the customer violent. Then sometimes we never give good service, they scold us, and sometimes ask money back. I don't dare to make police report, but sometimes the customer abuse abuse us or what. I don't dare lah. Just keep to myself only lah.
Why don't you want to? Why don't you want to report him and all?
Because I think that it's very troublesome, and then we work as sex worker. Sometimes police also ask. I scared that make it long story, like ask why you work like this or what. It's very troublesome, so that's why I don't want.
It puts them in an extremely vulnerable position, extremely disenfranchised position to exercise their rights. Recently, we had a sex worker come to us and the police said, hey, you want to sit here? Don't fucking solicit in front of my eyes. You go away, you go and do this somewhere else. And that's completely against their professional code. They're not allowed to swear.
Yeah.
And she also complained about that this officer she was beaten by her client. He smashed her head into the wall, and she went to the police, and the police did not want to take her case. Right? The police was like, I never see anything. And she was like, hey, you want me to die inside the room before you take my case, is it? Then finally the police took her case, but also said to her, do you know what you're doing is wrong? No, it's not. Soliciting is illegal, but sex work in and of itself is not illegal. And you have a duty to investigate any crime that has been reported to you. Eventually he took her case, but not without first hurting her emotionally. You see, right? For me, I'm very clear. The amount of violence that you see in red light districts only happen because these people have nowhere else to turn to. Right? Where else am I going to seek justice? If the police are not going to help me, if police are not going to believe me, then I'm going to take justice into my own hands, literally into my own hands, and beat up whoever did this to me, so that I feel like at least I have not been taken advantage of, or at least I have not,
Or at least
suffered.
fought for what I at least should have, or something like that.
Exactly.
Well, these stories remind us of the often unfair treatment that sex workers face in Singapore, and I think all over the world as well. We will hear more from Vanessa about the issues surrounding sex workers after this very short break. Hi and welcome back to Her Story. I am speaking with Vanessa Ho, the project director of Project X, an organization in Singapore that works with sex workers. She shared with me about these women's thoughts towards sex work and how they felt about the situation they are in.
A lot of them, when we talk to them, they often say this one sentence, and almost identically across different workers, licensed or unlicensed. No woman wants to do this, they will say. Right? No woman would dream when they're a child that they want to grow up to become a sex worker. But I do it because number 1, number 2, number 3. So they do this because they have to. Right? Then they will say, I'm lowly educated. I come from the village in some rural village in China, in Vietnam, in Indonesia. There are no other viable alternatives for me. And so I have to do this. If given an opportunity, and people love to including the police, they have said this to workers, why don't you go and get a job as a cleaner? No minimum wage in Singapore, right? Which means cleaners can earn as little as $600, $800, $1,000 per month. For Singaporeans, that's disgustingly low, right? You cannot make a living on that amount of money. Not if you have elderly parents, not if you have children, or if you have people that you have to support.
And I don't care like people look down on us or what. I don't care. It's my world. I want to do whatever I like. I don't care. One thing, because I need to pay my rental. Because I stay here, so I need to pay my rental money every day $40. So I must work lah. And I also heavy smoker, so I must find for my cigarette money lah. Actually, my boyfriend also got support me lah when he work lah, but it's not enough for me also. Because I need to support my 3 children. The 2 as children's home, so the 3 one I need to support. Because my daughter, she just started work, so I need to support her. So but if she start work with this, she got her own pay, own money, so I don't need to support. I just support 2 ni lah.
You see, the fact is that sex work is a good way for many people to break the poverty cycle. Yeah, we've had some of the older sex workers, the licensed ones, tell us they send their children to school, like university in England, to study law, to study accountancy, to study economics. So their children don't have that kind of same fate as them. Some of these sex workers are completely illiterate. So it's that kind of, and it's because of sex work that allows them to break out of that kind of livelihood and that kind of poverty cycle. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But yet they have to face this kinds of treatment from people.
But what about like kind of within the brothel? Like how does it work within the brothel? Is there a hierarchy, or do they kind of take care of them, and to what extent?
So with the licensed brothels, we have lesser outreach too, unfortunately. They are a little bit more closed off.
The licensed?
Yeah, the licensed
Okay.
one. They're more closed off because, remember I said this whole thing is regulated by a secret policy.
Yeah.
And also the rules are quite strict for some of these brothels. So I'll give you a point to illustrate. One of the rules for the licensed brothel workers is that they cannot solicit outside of the brothel that they are assigned to, right? So the bosses get paranoid whenever the workers are going to leave the brothel. And so the brothel owners become very overprotective. They say, if you're going out, make sure that the brother is going with you. Or if you're going out, make sure you tell me where you're going. Or even some of them will go to the extent that to tell them you're not allowed to go out. After work, you just go straight home. So they become very paranoid and very closed off.
What about the brothels then who do not have this license? I mean, is it a majority, minority? For example, like the majority of brothels have this license and minority don't, or is it the other way around?
The other way around.
So, okay.
Minority have a license. So from what I heard, there are about 800 to 1,000 licensed sex workers at any one point in time. If you look at figures from last year in 2015, or I think it's 2014, the police reported that they arrested close to 6,000 illegal sex workers. And I'm sure there are tons more that just do not get arrested, right? So already from that figure itself, you can see how much more unlicensed workers there are compared to licensed workers.
Okay, so for example, these women who are unlicensed, so if there is a raid of the brothel that obviously is unlicensed,
Yeah.
what happens? Like, do the women then get taken to task, deported,
Yeah.
or do the other brothel owners, do they are also taken to task? What happens?
Seems like there isn't a uniform way in which they are being treated. Right? Some, when they get arrested, the police will break down the doors and slam things and arrest them. They are locked up for 3 days, and then after that they are made to go back. They're deported and they face a 3-year travel ban. They never ever stand in front of a judge. They're never ever pronounced guilty. They're never ever formally charged with a crime. They are faced with an administrative ban. So basically what that means is that the police officer deems you to have done something illegal in Singapore, and so based on that information, they ban you from coming in for 3 years.
I see. They don't actually bring your case forward or anything like that. It just
No.
okay. So
Because they say that because there are just too many unlicensed sex workers in Singapore. If they had to present every single person to court, we have to open a new court.
yeah, new wing, right? Yeah.
just for
that,
unlicensed sex workers, which is problematic, right? Because then where is the due process? Where is the rule of law?
And where is the basic kind of the rights of those workers as well?
Exactly. Actually, we have spoken to a lot of workers. Some of them do want to be part of the licensing scheme, but they do not qualify. Because from what we heard, you have to be above 21 and under 35 years old in order to apply for a brothel license. We have heard that you can only come from 4 types of countries: China, Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia. Clearly, you cannot be HIV positive to work for a licensed brothel. But here's the thing, right? In this line, STIs and HIV is a risk that a lot of people in some way admit to. Right? They accept this risk rather. And there are lots of factors that can make you infected, right? It can be a violent client.
Yeah.
It can be break condoms.
Yeah.
It
can be somebody who refuses to use a condom,
Exactly.
even if you wanted to, right?
Exactly. So it can be completely not your fault. And so what happens is that you're almost in some way triply traumatized. 1, from the violent act, 2, from knowing that you have an infection now, and 3, from being deported with no treatment and no counseling. Which is horrible. That's not how you treat a person who has been a victim of various crimes. Until the day comes where there's absolutely no income inequality, absolutely no gender inequality in the world, the sex industry will always thrive.
I really want to thank Vanessa for sharing about the plight of sex workers in Singapore. It was very enlightening to hear their stories from someone who has worked very, very closely with them. And more importantly, I think the discrimination that these women face show how important organizations such as Project X are in our society. You know, I think that's why I love Women Talk so much, because every time we meet someone who's either has started a project or is empowering other people in their society, and it reminds me, you know, that we need people like Vanessa, we need organizations like Project X to speak up for the vulnerable, to speak up for people who are discriminated against, and especially people who go unnoticed. And that's why Women Talk is all about celebrating the unsung heroines. Now please stay tuned to the second part of our podcast with Vanessa from Project X, and she's going to be telling us more about the amazing work they do to empower sex workers, which is what this whole conversation has to be about. You can also log on to our Facebook page, facebook.com/WomenTalkTV. You can check out a video of our podcast with subtitles. Do subscribe to us if you want to hear more stories about the unsung heroines around us.